The cafeteria hummed with lunchtime energy, a cascade of laughter, clinking trays, and the steady shuffle of people moving to claim a corner of peace. She stood in line, small and composed, eyes fixed on the menu board as if choosing a chess move. Her uniform was neat, her backpack worn but tidy, and there was an air about her that said she belonged nowhere and everywhere at once. The man in front of her was impatient, tapping his fingers on the counter. Behind the counter, the manager moved with practiced efficiency. He had sharp cheekbones and an even sharper tongue. He liked the sound of his own voice and the way other people jumped when he snapped it out. When it was her turn to pay, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her wallet. The manager glanced down and smirked. Then he said the words that would start the story, "Got balance? I'll pay double." The line fell quieter in that instant. People half turned, curious and cautious. Her fingers hesitated over the cards in her wallet. There was a flash across her face, embarrassment maybe or an annoyed pride, and then a small, calm voice that surprised everyone by speaking without tremor. "It's enough," she said. "Enough?" the manager echoed, mockery thick like syrup. "You sure about that? Because I can spot you. I can even double it. Put on a show for us." A ripple of chuckles, the sort that thrive on other people's unease, rolled through the line. She felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she kept her eyes down and counted out the cash, every note as steady as a metronome. Someone snickered. Someone else whispered, and the whisper spread like steam. An older woman in line shifted forward and said under her breath, "Kids these days." A young man with earbuds only half inserted smirked. A boy with a comic book watched with wide eyes, sensing a drama he understood more from cartoons than adult cruelty. She handed over the exact amount. The manager pushed the tray toward another employee as if dismissing her, and then he barked a laughter that didn't reach his eyes. "You do know who I am, right? You're lucky I'm not feeling generous today." She turned then, finally, and looked up. Her face was not the face most people expected. It carried a quiet intelligence and a tired grace, like someone who had learned to carry heavy things without letting anyone see the strain. Her gaze met his, and for a moment there was the kind of silence that fills the space after a song ends, when you realize the melody was more important than the notes. But then footsteps cut into the hush. A woman in a tailored suit appeared at the entrance to the cafeteria, the world shifting in a new direction with her presence. The room seemed to realign around her. People stepped aside without knowing they had done so. She walked with the easy assurance of someone used to getting what she wanted. Her smile was small and practiced, and when she scanned the room her eyes landed on the manager, then on the young girl. A flicker of recognition crossed her face, and then, as if the world had just rearranged its furniture into a joke with perfect timing, the woman walked toward them. The manager straightened and put on a performance of authority. "Is there something I can help you with, ma'am?" he said, voice thick with the expectation of a compliment. She stopped near the counter and watched the exchange with a neutral interest. Her gaze slid to the young girl and then back to the manager. He puffed up, delighted to be seen and to be seen important. "She just paid," the manager said, nodding to the girl and waiting for approval, for perhaps an acknowledgement of his rightful place as gatekeeper of the cafeteria. The woman smiled then, a tiny private thing. "I hope she paid enough for a proper meal," she said. "We wouldn't want her to go hungry." The manager blinked, the joke landing like a dull stone. "Excuse me? My daughter?" The woman's voice warmed. "I explained earlier she might come for lunch. She's been at the company library finishing an assignment. I didn't realize your manager would make a spectator sport out of a child's wallet." The room went still again. The older woman who had commented before swallowed. The young man with earbuds pulled one out, suddenly all ears. The boy with the comic book stopped flipping pages. The manager's smirk died a slow death on his face. "Your daughter?" he repeated, as if repeating the words might change the map of reality. "Yes," the woman said, and the word was soft but it carried weight. She stepped forward slightly and offered her hand to the girl without fanfare. "Lila, come meet the people." Lila, the girl, looked at the hand, then at the woman, and for a second a child's confusion settled onto her features. Then recognition dawned, not the kind of recognition that lights up like a neon sign, but the deeper one that rearranges a life quietly. She moved forward and accepted the hand. There are many kinds of fathers and mothers in this town. Some announce themselves with city-wide decals and charity gala invitations. Others prefer a behind-the-scenes influence. The woman beside Lila did not demand attention. She owned it, the kind of ownership that doesn't need to broadcast. The manager's hands curled into fists. "You can't just waltz in here and—" "I didn't waltz," the woman said. "I walked through the entrance like everyone else." I did not expect a public spectacle. His voice tried for arrogance but landed on panic. You can't just, this is staff policy. I don't need to be. The woman watched him with an unhurried patience. What's the name of this place? Downtown Commons, ma'am, he said, voice tight. Downtown Commons, she repeated as if tasting the words. And who manages it? You do, the manager said, a near-automatic deflection. The woman's smile returned, this time edged with an unexpected sweetness. You might want to ask the company who their manager is. He tried to play it off with a joke, but it came out brittle. I run the place. I set the rules. I'm the one making sure people pay what they owe. Are you? She said. Because downstairs in the main office the memo says something different. At that, someone behind the counter, a younger employee who had been watching, slipped a phone from his apron and scrolled. He found the memo, the name, the signature. He held it up, pandemonium of eyes following. The manager's face paled. This is a misunderstanding. Is it? The woman asked. There was no need for loudness. The quiet was louder. She stepped closer and people could feel the temperature shift like weather changing before a storm. I'm Victoria Hale, she said. Her name carried the kind of resonance that makes subway riders look up from their newspapers. I'm the CEO of Hale Industries. And this is my daughter, Lila. A murmur swept through the cafeteria. A cluster of students dropped their trays. A man who'd been leaning against the wall straightened out, the muscles of his face rearranging into something respectful. The manager opened his mouth and closed it again. He reached out as if to take control of a conversation and found his hands empty. What do you want? He asked finally, a question that was at once small and huge. I want you to apologize, Victoria said. To her, to the staff, to everyone who was made to feel small while you thought it made you look big. The manager's throat worked. Pride is a stubborn thing. For many, admitting wrong is like cutting off a limb. He swallowed, then forced a laugh that died quickly. Apologize? For what? For doing my job? For keeping things orderly? For humiliating a child in front of other people, Victoria said. For making it a spectacle. For thinking that power comes from belittling others. He stammered, eyes flicking for an ally. None came. The younger employee stepped away, unwilling to be complicit. The older woman in line murmured, finally. The manager's jaw tightened. I didn't mean, intention doesn't undo the harm, Victoria replied. But sincerity can start to mend it. Say it plainly. He looked at Lila. She had gone quiet, the earlier color drained from her face. There was something in her posture that suggested she had grown used to swallowing things others said about her. There was also something else, a steadiness that suggested swallowing had taught her how to breathe differently. The manager's voice came out small. I'm sorry, he said, and it sounded thin. Victoria's face softened, but she didn't let the moment be a bomb to excuse behavior. Mean it. Tell her you were wrong and you'll do better. He cleared his throat. I was wrong, he said louder. I won't do it again. The crowd exhaled as if they'd been holding their breath. Lila blinked and a tiny, cautious smile began to unfurl. The manager shifted, uncomfortable under the gaze of so many eyes that had once deferred to him. Victoria turned to the staff. I expect better from the people who represent my company, she said. We will be conducting sensitivity training next week. And we'll revisit how the cafeteria is managed. A hush took the room, this time pregnant with relief, not tension. The manager left his post at the counter as if the air had become too thin. He muttered something about a break and retreated to the back. People resumed their lunches, but the rhythm had changed. Conversations took on new topics. Some whispered about wealth and kindness, others about the power dynamics that seep into small spaces. Lila and Victoria sat at a corner table, away from the hum, their presence like a quiet island. Are you okay? Victoria asked, voice soft now, the CEO morphing into the mother. Lila shrugged, the movement small and casual, but there was a tremor in it. I'm fine, she said. I go to the library to finish projects. I don't mind paying. I just didn't like the show. You handled it well, Victoria said, and there was something in that praise that felt like sunlight through a window. I'm sorry you had to go through it. Lila looked up. It's not the first time, she said. People can be mean if they think you're different, or if they think they can get a reaction. Victoria listened, and the softness in her eyes was tinged with a fascinated regret. We should have told you sooner, she said. I didn't want to pressure you. Lila's laugh was a tiny, sharp thing. You didn't know. You work with grown-ups who have meetings. I have the library and my homework. They sat for a moment in companionable silence. Around them, life resumed. The boy with the comic book had resumed flipping pages, now fully aware that stories sometimes mirror life. The young man with earbuds had slipped his headphones back in, but his shoulders were less smug. The older woman had gone back to her knitting, hands steady. When they rose to leave, people watched them go. Some nodded respectfully. Others gave small smiles, the kind that say, "We see you." Before they left the cafeteria, Victoria paused and turned back to the manager who had taken refuge behind a potted plant. He looked smaller than before, the arrogance stripped by the quiet correction. "People deserve dignity," she said simply. He avoided meeting her eyes. I understand." "Then show it," she said. "Good behavior can be taught and it can be expected. This isn't a favor I asked. It's a standard at Hale Industries." He nodded, words unnecessary. Victoria and Lila walked out together, a mother and her child, ordinary and extraordinary at once. The manager watched them go and then looked around at the people in the cafeteria. That afternoon, a memo went out to all staff. It was concise and firm: treat colleagues and customers with respect. Sensitivity training dates were scheduled. The manager, reluctant at first, attended the first session with a face like a man attending jury duty, unwilling but compelled. Weeks later, the manager's brusque humor softened. He learned the awkwardness of apology when it had to be sincere, the strange lightness that follows when someone finally owns a mistake. It was not instant transformation. People are complicated and habits are stubborn. But the atmosphere of the cafeteria eased. The laughter that filled it became less sharp, more inclusive. Lila's story spread quietly around the company, not as gossip but as a lesson. People remembered the cool resolve of Victoria and the quiet courage of a girl who paid her own way. They started to notice the little humiliations that had long been accepted as jokes and the quiet power in standing up without raising a voice. A year later, Lila came back to the cafeteria with a stack of papers, art she had been working on at the library. She handed a drawing to the manager, who had come to recognize the sound of apology in the way his employees treated others. "You drawn this?" he asked, awkward but sincere. Lila nodded. "For you," she said. "To remind you that people are more than a laugh." He looked at the drawing, a simple scene of a child and an adult sharing a bench, smiling. The manager's eyes were moist behind his usual stern mask. He smiled then, small and awkward and maybe real. "Thank you," he said. Outside, Victoria watched from a distance, a private satisfaction tucked behind her professional composure. She knew that one moment of correction didn't fix everything, but it changed the current. It altered how people met each other in a place that was meant to be ordinary and safe. The city moved on, schedules and deadlines stacking like plates in a sink. But in one little cafeteria, the balance had truly shifted, once because someone refused to perform humiliation, and once because someone with power chose to use it to protect rather than to punish. And sometimes, when the noise settled in that place, people would nod and tell the story like a small fable. A manager learned humility, a girl found her dignity, and a mother discovered how influence feels best when it shows up quietly and kindly. Kindness rippled onward, hearts healed.